Now we'll extend PIM beyond directory roles. You'll see how just-in-time approval, least privilege, and auditing help protect Azure resources and privileged groups across Microsoft 365, Azure, and application administration. So far, we've moved from identity fundamentals and privileged access risks through PAM architecture and Microsoft Entra PIM basics. Next, we'll apply that model to Azure RBAC and privileged access groups. Then we'll shift into alerts, auditing, reviews, and the operational practices that keep privileged access controlled over time. Azure resource roles are powerful because they control the systems your business runs on: virtual machines, storage, databases, networks, subscriptions, and security settings. Permanent owner or contributor access creates real risk. A simple mistake can affect production, and a compromised account can cause serious damage. PIM changes that model by keeping administrators eligible until access is actually needed. Activation can require MFA, justification, approval, a limited duration, and full audit logging. The outcome is just-in-time privilege. Enough access to do the job without standing access waiting to be misused. With Azure RBAC, the role matters, but the scope matters just as much. Scope moves from broad to narrow: management group, subscription, resource group, and then individual resource. Permissions granted higher up are inherited below, so a subscription-level role can reach every resource group and resource inside that subscription. That is useful, but it is also risky. When using PIM, assign or activate access at the smallest scope that supports the task. If someone only needs to manage one database or one resource group, avoid granting access across the whole subscription. Different roles create different levels of risk. Owner is the most powerful because it combines full resource control with the ability to grant access to others. Contributor can change or delete infrastructure, but it cannot directly assign RBAC roles, which removes one major escalation path. User access administrator is sensitive in a different way. It can grant access, including highly privileged roles. Security admin is more specialized, focused on security settings and posture. The key model is simple: protect roles that control resources, and protect even more carefully the roles that control access. At subscription scope, privilege stops being local. For example, an engineer with permanent contributor access may not be an owner, but they can still deploy resources, change networks, modify storage settings, and affect production infrastructure across many resource groups. Owner expands that risk further by adding control over access assignments. User access administrator creates a different path to escalation by granting access to others. A safer pattern is eligibility, approval, time limits, and monitoring, with subscription-level roles reserved for specific operational needs. PIM for Azure resources acts as the governance layer around Azure RBAC. Instead of giving someone standing owner or contributor access, you make them eligible. When access is needed, they activate the role just in time and only for a limited window. That activation can require MFA, a business justification, approval, and ticket details. The same approach works across management groups, subscriptions, resource groups, and supported resources. What you gain is controlled access, plus an audit trail showing who activated access, when, why, and which Azure scope was affected. Scope is one of the most important PIM design choices. Higher scopes, such as management groups, create powerful inheritance across many subscriptions. They are useful for governance, but they carry the highest blast radius. Subscription scope is often a practical middle ground for platform operations and break-glass scenarios. Resource groups fit application teams because access maps to a workload boundary. Individual resources provide maximum precision for sensitive assets or one-off tasks. The goal is not always the smallest possible scope. It is the narrowest scope that still lets people do their work without constant friction. Think of an eligible assignment as permission to ask, not permission to act. The user is trusted for a role, but the privileged rights are not currently turned on. When a real task requires access, they request activation through PIM, satisfy the required controls, and become active for a limited window. Active means the Azure RBAC permissions are usable right now. When the window expires, that access ends automatically. This is how PIM supports just-in-time administration while keeping least privilege as the default state. Configuring PIM for Azure resource roles starts with scope. Decide where the access is actually needed: management group, subscription, or resource group. Then choose the Azure RBAC role that matches the task, such as owner, contributor, user access administrator, or security admin. Add the right users or groups as eligible, rather than permanently active, whenever possible. The real control comes from activation settings: MFA, justification, approval, limited duration, and notifications. Finally, review the assignment to confirm it grants enough access for the job, but no more. When someone needs elevated access to an Azure resource, the process should be temporary by design. They choose the specific role, scope, and duration they need. PIM checks the activation policy, which may require MFA, a business justification, a ticket number, or manager approval. Only after those controls are satisfied does Azure grant active RBAC permissions, and only for the approved time window. When the timer ends, the role is removed automatically. The result is access that is policy enforced, time-bound, and fully auditable. Privileged access groups let you govern privilege through group membership instead of assigning high-impact roles directly to each user. A user can be eligible for membership, activate when needed, and receive access only for the approved time window. The same idea applies to group ownership, so management of the group can also be controlled through PIM. Once active, that group can unlock Entra roles, Azure roles, Microsoft 365 admin functions, or application access. This is especially useful when teams need controlled, auditable, just-in-time access across multiple services. These groups are most valuable when the same elevated access is needed across systems, but only for short periods. A Microsoft 365 admin might activate membership to manage Exchange or Teams. An Azure operations engineer might join a group that carries contributor rights for a specific subscription. An application support team might activate admin access for Salesforce, ServiceNow, or Workday during an incident. The pattern stays consistent: centralize access, make it just in time, and leave a clean audit trail. Strong PIM design still comes back to scope and governance. If someone only needs access to one resource group, do not activate them at the subscription level. The same principle applies to roles. Avoid making owner or user access administrator permanent, because those roles can reshape the access model. Privileged access groups need governance as well. Each group should have a clear purpose, owner, review cycle, and activation policy. Also, watch for hidden risk, such as nested groups, broad membership, or one group unlocking several sensitive systems. The key takeaway is that PIM is not limited to Entra directory roles. It can also govern high-impact Azure RBAC access across management groups, subscriptions, resource groups, and resources. Privileged access groups add scalable, time-bound control for group-based administration. Next, we'll focus on alerts, auditing, access reviews, and the operational practices that keep privileged access mature.